please.
I think it's 6:30.
You ready to go, Kim? Am I live? Can you make sure?
Yeah.
You can hear it?
Yes. Floyd
Okay.
says
I want to welcome everyone to the regular session of the Abingdon Town Council on Monday, April 20th, 2020. Thank you for attending and thank you for your participation. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bradley. Let the record reflect Mr. Bradley is not present. Ms. Quetch.
Here.
Mr. Webb.
Here.
Ms. Patterson.
Here.
Mayor Craig.
Here. Donna, would you lead us in the pledge to the flag, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, at this time, we're going to use a procedure that allows Mr. Bradley to join our meeting electronically. In order to do that, I'm going to make a motion that we amend the agenda to move item H1 to the top of the agenda and item I1 to follow item H1. Is there a second?
Second.
And, excuse me, and also to approve the agenda as amended, excuse me. Go ahead, Derek, you second that?
I second that.
Now, motion by Mayor Craig and a second by Derek Webb. Is there any discussion? Kim, call the roll, please.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye. Okay, at this time, we'll take up item H1, and Cam, if you would explain that to us, please.
For a second. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have in your packet a resolution for the town of Abingdon in support of an electronic meeting policy. As you've seen, there's been lots and lots of discussion as to how to handle open meeting laws along with, as they say, these challenging times with the virus. So we've drafted a resolution that incorporates the ability for us to meet electronically consistent with statute. And you'll look down to 4, has a particular provision there that if during the emergency council wished to meet solely electronically only to discuss the emergency, then this policy would allow that. So if council passes this resolution, then I think Mr. Bradley, pursuant to the procedures of 3 of this provision, will be able to participate electronically, and we can do that in the future. This really existed all along. We just have to adopt a policy in order to use the statutory procedure. As you probably know, the governor has suggested to the General Assembly that these rules be lessened going forward, but General Assembly has to act, and they don't meet until Wednesday, and so in order for us to do it tonight, then we have to go along with this resolution.
Thank you. Cam?
Yes, sir.
Council, what's your pleasure on the resolution?
I move to adopt the resolution as Cam stated and allow Mr. Bradley to join us.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Webb to adopt the resolution and allow Mr. Bradley to participate. Second by Donna Quetch. Is there any discussion? Kim, call the roll, please.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye.
And Mayor Craig, now that that has passed, I assume Mr. Bradley's on the phone, he'll need to state the reason that he is unable to attend the meeting and the remote location from which he participates, so it can be recorded in the minutes.
Al, are you with us?
I guess
might be needed.
Al, are you with us?
I think his picture will come up when he shows up.
There is a little delay in his feed, so he may only hear you in about 20 seconds. Really? Yeah. Hang on.
At least he'll be able to listen, he just won't be able to.
Let's see if I can get his number. What's his phone number?
Here. 76628.
Hey, Keith,
276?
can you just read that for him and allow him to confirm that? I doubt if he can restate that.
Sure.
Hey, Al. Can you hear the meeting? Okay, you see the microphone, red microphone down at the bottom of your screen or in the middle of your screen with a slash through it? You need to click that so the slash goes away. Press on it, yeah. And then you should be able to talk when you do. If the slash goes away. Yeah. Can you speak? Is your... Okay, I'll tell you what. Yeah, go ahead and speak. Could you talk now? Now, go.
I'm talking right now.
Okay.
So just have,
Now we got feedback. Hold on. We still can't hear you, Al. You're not through the system. If you can talk and tell them that,
what is it, Cam, the location and the reason why he's not,
your location and the reason you're not participating in this meeting.
Well, I'm at home, but I'm not participating because of the COVID virus problem right now.
What's your address?
is adequate?
You state your address, Mr. Bradley?
143 Stonewall Heights.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Just stay on this phone now.
All right, we
And that's
done?
sufficient.
Okay.
I'll watch it.
Council, at this time, we'll take up item H1. And, Mr. Rose, would you,
I won.
what?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
No,
Can y'all
I'm
hear
sorry.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I stated it was H1, it's item I1. So, Mr. Rose, if you'd like to go ahead and speak with us.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor, members of council and manager and Stephanie there as well. I think you all have in your packet a presentation that we have got that's titled Observations on FY21 Proposed Budget and the Updated Funding Strategy for the Meadows. Is that what y'all have? Make sure?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, so if you turn to that first page about the proposed 21 budget, the important thing here is that I had the opportunity with my colleagues, particularly Jimmy Sanderson, who's my partner, to talk at length on several occasions now with the town manager and with Stephanie, who's of course participating and is working on a part-time basis in the finance area. And so I was able to make a series of observations that I realize Stephanie will go into more detail later on. But I think these are important observations that I would like to suggest give us, meaning us Davenport as your financial advisor, as much comfort as possible in an uncomfortable environment. And that said, first and foremost, we understand and being able to see that you've developed a balanced budget that does not rely on the unassigned fund balance. And for those of you may all recall, it's critical from our perspective that you don't go into that unassigned fund balance for several reasons. One is that we may ultimately unexpectedly need it. Hopefully that's not the case. Number two, we enjoy very strong credit ratings from the rating agencies, and we don't want to do anything that would hurt that. And that's the first thing rating agencies notice. I think the third thing is that you need a certain amount of these funds to be able to cash flow the government on a regular basis in good or bad times. And as a result, spending some of that would only be counterproductive because ultimately it would make it more difficult for you to, again, pay the bills without having to do any short-term borrowing, which is definitely a loser on any account. So finally, if indeed there is emergencies, unlike this, but let's say over the summertime we get hurricanes or even tornadoes and we need to expend some dollars that ultimately we expect something like FEMA to pay us back, this is important why you have that unassigned fund balance. You have a policy, you may recall, you're at that policy, you don't have a lot of extra over and above that policy, but you're in a solid position. And so we want to make sure that you don't use that, and you're not, with regard to the budget. Second, we see that you rely on a one-time sale of property at about $600,000. Again, if you're confident in that, you feel good about that, again, we're okay with that. We just don't know how positive that absolute sale of property is, but we're going to go by your perspective that, again, that's a solid expectation. Having said that, though, you have expected about $500,000 of cash funding of capital projects, and that, from our perspective, and the rating agency's perspective as well, is a good cushion, if you would, because if you needed to, and you needed those projects, you could always borrow for that, put aside the politics, put aside the desirability, but you could borrow for that. Not that we're suggesting it, but the point is, you have that cushion by borrowing cash that gives you, in effect, that flexibility. That's how the rating folks look at it. That's how we look at it. So again, not suggesting you borrow for it, but it's the knowledge that that cash is there, could always be rediverted if necessary, even if that's politically undesirable. The next thing is that we were able to see that you've made about $1.5 million in reductions to what were otherwise assumed revenues of sales, lodging, meals taxes. That, from our perspective, was a pretty dramatic amount. We looked at how you were thinking about that. That made sense to us. So again, we think that we're coming into all of this in a mode where you've done some significant cutting with regard to some of those assumptions. You've also cut a number of things in terms of expenditures. So again, Stephanie will talk about that with the manager, but we were impressed, dismayed that you have to do it, but again, impressed that you've been doing this, you're being proactive. In addition, the next point, I know we started talking about this before the meeting started, very simply, was you're not expecting any federal or state stimulus monies. So having said that, hopefully there will be some dollars to come, but we like the fact that you're not counting on them. That's the most important thing. And then finally, you have incorporated your debt service payments in the general fund, which includes debt service on the Meadows project. So that's important. And that is hopefully part of the comfort level. So what I'm going to talk about in a few moments about the Meadows is not in any way going to hurt what you set up in the 2019 budget. Happy to stop for a moment, Mr. Mayor, answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll just keep going.
I'm
Is there
good.
any questions?
I'm good.
I would like to, David, I would like to make sure that everybody understands, the unassigned fund balance is commonly known as a rainy day fund, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how much money right now currently we have in there? There was over 5 million.
I do. It's Stephanie's got the exact amount. I'm gonna say it's typically around $5 million. Stephanie, what is that number?
I don't have my audit with me, but I think the last audit was 5.4 million. I'll run down and grab that.
Okay.
Okay.
I've got
You may
it, that's what
recall,
it is.
some of you may recall, at the one time when we set it up, $5 million was sort of the minimum, but because the natural budget's grown, again, it may be at 5.4, and/or the fact that you're a little bit above that, which has been also positive. So Stephanie will get that for you, but we wanted you to know that you're in compliance. So hopefully your rainy day fund is where it needs to be, and that's important.
And the reduction of the $1,500,000, could you tell me what dates that occurred in, please?
It's a little hard to hear you, but that $1.5 million is a combination of those three taxes that we talked about. There's different amounts per each one, and Stephanie and I think Mr. Morani can give you some of those details. I've got that in some of my worksheets, but I'm not right here, easy to kind of pull away from the presentation, so.
And I'm sorry.
I know the breakout.
I'm sorry you couldn't hear me, but I was inquiring about the dates, the date time frame that occurred.
We just talked about that as late as, I will say maybe last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday timeframe.
Can I jump in here,
Yeah.
Mayor? I think what Dave is referring, this 1.5 million is, over the last couple months, we've had to make some changes of scope for the project. I believe that's what he's referring to. Isn't that correct, John? I mean, the 1.5 million, we had to, if he's talking about the project, is that what he's referring
No,
to?
she's talking about the reduction, I believe.
The reduction in
the
revenue
revenues.
assumptions.
It's where we had to.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's from the revenue
Instead of
assumptions, my bad. That comes from the projections for the general fund.
Projections.
Yeah, so we're particularly, and we'll get into that when we do the budget presentation, but specifically with meals and lodging, the projections are pretty significant as far as the loss of revenue. So that's what we've been
That's
working on with
projections
Stephanie.
the
Yeah,
next year.
yeah. I apologize, I
That's
got
okay.
sidetracked.
One
so.
more question, please. Are
Yes,
we,
ma'am.
are we allowed to discuss what property we're speaking of the 600,000, or is that we have?
Well,
It's the Hassenger
Hassenger
house.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what's in there. Yeah, it's,
They had it appraised.
we had it appraised, and that's gonna be in the budget for sale, yeah.
Okay, I think that's all for now, thank you.
Okay. So if you would turn to the next page, which is about your debt profile, I think this is going to be very important as a backdrop to the overall thinking about the next phase, the Meadows project, and the sports complex. So let me sort of give you just the essence of it. When we exclude the Meadows project, the town has less than 2.5 million of principal outstanding, and it's all paid off within 10 years. And in fact, it's really all paid off in the next 5 or 6 years. So we have a very, very strong payoff and debt structure from a perspective of a burden, if you would. Very, very solid position. Our debt service is relatively flat over the next 3 fiscal years, 21, 22, 23, and actually through 24, so 4 fiscal years. And that's roughly about $410,000 per year. In addition, 25 and 26 fiscal year, that roughly $400,000 drops down by almost half because we're paying off some debt at that point. So we are, again, a rapid payoff that drops down in effect almost in half within 5 years. So it puts us in a very good position to take on what has been the expected Meadows debt. So that's the takeaway there. Now, the other thing is all of the debt is at strong, meaning solid interest rates, under 3%. However, because this debt only has a few years to go, we think there may be some opportunities to further reduce that debt service, not extend the debt at all, but just simply to reduce the debt service by virtue of getting from what might be the mid 2% or high 2% to something even lower than that. And we're going to talk about that in a few moments, about some of the recommendations that we have. So, with that debt profile to the side, let's turn the page and talk about the Meadows project and what this means, because again, we know that the development continues. The good news is that it is progressing basically per the time schedule the development team has provided to us and that we've been looking at. And so it remains that at completion, which is FY22, the revenue estimates are between 1.1 and 1.25 million annually. You may recall that was a combination of revenue sources that we presented to you, the council, based upon what was provided to us, as well as discussions with the county's treasurer, Mr. Parker. So again, that is not all of the revenues that are expected, but those were certain of the very noticeable revenues. So with that said, the whole issue was, if we have that range of revenues expected by the end of FY22, what is the offsetting debt service for all of this? Now, I would add, what we are going to present to you here is that debt service is $775,000. That's an estimate. That's the full debt service, which also includes not a $10 million overall borrowing, but a $12 million borrowing. What we have been provided by the town manager and staff is that we should expect that the sports complex could be an additional $2 million in terms of need to borrow by virtue of the estimates for the bids. Now, I will point out, we will not recommend and not go to the marketplace until such time as we have the bids known. So we will not be borrowing with your blessing any more than is necessary. But we have purposely for this assumed it's going to be about $775,000. So hopefully that's clear. Now, you may ask, with what's going on and all of that, how is the current expectations of revenues, the 21 budget established, and the debt service on the Meadows, is that already incorporated? And so the good news here is the answer is yes to all of that. In the FY21 budget that you're going to be talking about, there is already $250,000 incorporated into your debt service profile to incorporate the existing debt on the Meadows that's being paid based upon what we've already done to date with your blessing. So there's no surprises, will be no surprises in FY21. However, in FY22 and 23, we are estimating that by going forward with the Meadows project and incorporating that extra $2 million, there'll be a ramp up of debt service from $250,000 to $500,000. And then ultimately in FY 2024 and beyond, it'll peak at $775,000. Could be a little lower than that, could be a little bit higher than that, but we don't think so. We think it's going to be no more than $775,000. And I say that with 100% certainty? No, but you know me. I've tried to build in some cushion of effectively some, I'll call it cushion just like that, in 2024. Now, having said that, what is going to be available? So you look at that estimate range of revenues that I mentioned. It's going to be at the low end, around $1 million. At the high end, it could be higher for it's $1,250,000. So you'll notice here is what we feel good about. Well, we're not an economist. We think the FY.
David, you're breaking up.
21, calendar year 21 certainly. Oh, okay. Can y'all hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I may have covered over my work. But what we think is going to happen is that the revenues, even if they are lower than estimated, should be more than enough to cover that $500,000 that would be occurring in FY '22 as well as '23. And then we don't get to the effect to 2024, the 775. So we feel good that we've given you ample time to see this overall crisis linger and be slow to get back to normalcy and still have more than enough revenues to cover. Can't say with certainty, Mayor and members of council, but again, we think we've got ample time. And frankly, we purposely, even before the COVID-19, you may recall, we set it up that way for the unexpected. We certainly didn't expect a pandemic. We did expect a slowing of revenues to start. So, if I could, I'd like to go on to the next page about your timetable that was provided to us.
I do have a question.
Project, the next steps.
David,
So what we understand.
David,
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Patterson would like to ask you a question if we can interrupt you.
Sure, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, just so we don't go across another page here, I'm gonna stay on this page for 1 second here. In your
Yes.
figures, on the key, under key observations, did you include the revenue from the business that was moved across the street from the old, Kmart to the new development in these figures?
What we included in those figures for the $1.1 million or $1.2.5 is just what was in, we'll call it, sort of the project itself. That's as best as we have. I could get you, Vice Mayor, some more breakout, which I don't have, of how we got to the $1.1 million, the $1.25 million. Don't have it right here, but I could certainly get that for you.
So just to make that clear, the Hallmark was included in the figures for the development, for the Meadows, correct?
It's not included, no, that was not included, no.
Okay, so you broke that out of this paperwork.
Yes, we did, and that was provided to us, again, so just so you know, that was provided to us.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay, so, if we go to, give me 1 second here, make notes. Okay, if we go to, the Meadows project, the update, this was provided to us by your staff in working with the folks' development team. But again, I think you can look at this, I don't need to necessarily overdo it, but we're assuming that basically on or about July 15th, the bids are received. And you'll notice in a few moments, we're working on a time schedule funding that sort of coincides with not doing the actual borrowing until we really have the bids in and they're acceptable to y'all in terms of being correct and being acceptable, I guess, just the way it's said that way. We then understand construction would occur over a 6-month period roughly, depending on weather, and that ideally, if things do open up or limited open up, come next spring, which would be again, towards the end of the 21 fiscal year, you would then have this open. Remember what I said, even if we're disappointed, even if this goes on, we're basically assuming that we would not have an increase in the debt service until FY '22, which doesn't start until that July and goes, of course, a whole 12 months. So what we like about that is that increase in FY '22. This, again, is basically your project is pretty much done with regard to the things that the development team is putting in. You're then assuming that you're just going to see an increase in FY '22 of about $250,000 over and above the base that we have now. So we like that cushion, if you would, and that would last for 2 years. So again, there would have to be some catastrophic things happening if come 2024 fiscal year, we're not close to having enough dollars to take care of when the debt increases. So that's it. Okay? Anyone else with any comments or concerns? Or I can go on. Mr. Mayor.
Council, do you have any comments or
I'm good.
concerns? Al, are you with us? Do you have any comments or concerns, Al?
Okay.
David is asking.
No, I don't have anything yet. We'll take this up later.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Okay, so last page here is simply our recommendations, our observations, is that if council would agree, we would like to explore and recommend that we move forward on developing a financing that incorporates potentially some refunding of existing debt for the sole purpose of bringing your debt service down and helping with the cash flows, to incorporate the $2 million. If it's more or if it's less, obviously, we're talking about the $2 million for the moment of the sports complex that's provided to us. And then once we have all of that known, we would sell bonds, basically either it's late June or it's sometime early in July, once we know, as we said, and have acceptable bids. Closing them basically a few weeks later, which again provides you certainty that you've got the dollars to move forward in the sports complex. I think one of the things that I would point out as your advisor is this. While you look at certain projects, this sports complex, one of the things that we understand about it is that inevitably it will bring new folks into town with regard to new revenues. It's not just a matter of recycling existing revenues amongst facilities or what have you. It's a whole venue that would bring people that are not members of the town or in Washington County into this area. And so it is truly an economic development engine, but it may be slower by virtue of people being able to sign up and set up these various things. So that's why the ramping up of the debt service has always been thought about and has been further modified here to take care of this. So with that, I will be quiet, happy to answer any questions and stay on. And if I can't answer those questions, as you know, Mr. Mayor, we could certainly try to get you those answers quickly following this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Council, do you all have any questions?
I don't.
Any questions, Al?
I wondered if you don't mind, oh,
Oh, excuse me.
go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Bradley.
No questions for Mr. Rhodes, but thank you very much for all. And thank you, sir, for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
I just have a quick question. Did this get put out to the website for the public to see?
Not yet, but we can.
Would you mind?
Yeah, sure. We'll put it out on the website.
Okay.
We had a change we had made earlier today with figures, so we.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. If there's no questions, then I understand that this doesn't require any council action at this time.
It does not, Mr. Mayor. I think what we just wanted was to get your guidance, meaning the council's guidance, to start moving forward. You certainly are not bound to ultimately move forward. You're going to have that opportunity basically come sometime, I would say roughly in June. But we are assuming, hopefully, that you are moving forward with getting those bids and doing those things so that, again, we will then have an appropriate number to use. And like I said, the other reason we'd like to move forward is to explore the potential refunding opportunities, and that would all be done at one time.
Okay, council, with your permission, I think I should poll the council and figure out if we want to go forward in accordance with Davenport's recommendation. Is that appropriate, Jimmy?
Mr. Mayor, did you want to just open it up for any public comments before, or you want to do that? No, you want to do it afterwards?
We're having a public hearing. No.
Yes.
Yeah,
Public comments we are not going to respond to.
Okay, that's fine.
Excuse me, go ahead.
It was advertised as a public hearing.
Yeah.
It was that?
Yeah. So that's why I thought maybe you'd conduct the public hearing first, and then we could take action on that.
For clarity,
We just moved David's presentation up so we could speak first, so.
Hold on. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, yeah, we need to open the public hearing. Okay, I'm sorry. At this time, I'll open the public hearing on this matter. If there's anyone who would like to speak, please come forward and state your name and address, and please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Are they with us downstairs?
They are, and so far no one has approached.
I am with you. We currently don't have any speakers signed up to speak.
Okay.
That's John,
Then if that's the case, I declare the public hearing closed, and we'll proceed as I suggested. I think that's how staff wants us to proceed, is to poll the council. So, Mr. Bradley, are you in favor of proceeding with this as recommended, or what's your?
I don't think he heard you.
Al, can you hear me?
I hear you, but I don't understand what you're asking, sorry.
The staff wants guidance from us as to whether or not we should proceed with the recommendations of Davenport, and I assume the staff is in favor of this also. We're at there. I'm polling the council to figure that out so that they'll know how to proceed.
All right, are we on I-1 now?
Yes.
Public hearing.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I have some questions for the council about it.
Okay. Go ahead.
In our present financial circumstance, with reduced income for the town and laying off people, laying off employees for the town, I don't see how $2 million extra on this bond issue is appropriate for the town at this time. I think the project ought to be reduced in scope to match the money that's available for it.
Okay. So I take that to mean that you're not in favor of the proceeding until we reduce the scope or something of that nature, is that correct?
No, I'm not in favor of proceeding with the $2 million bond issue.
Okay.
And I think this is irresponsible on the council's part.
Okay. Donna, how about you?
I'm for moving forward. This has been dragging on way too long, and I think we just gotta move forward and get it done. We've already started it, we gotta finish it.
Okay, Derek, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I agree with Donna. I think we need to move forward, and actually, I think it would be irresponsible to leave it like it is right now without progressing. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's certainly no way businesses are gonna come to town if we don't offer what we said we were gonna offer. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me, absolutely move forward.
Okay, Cindy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the sports field, we were on track with getting it to go forward. However, during this pandemic, and as Mr. Bradley said, we've had to lay folks off. I think that we're irresponsible for a town council if we move forward and borrow $2 more additional $1 million. We had a meeting, and I would like to refresh the council's memory, back on November the 19th. We had the Recreation Committee, and we had the town council meeting, and it was a work session. And at minute 58, Mr. Smith had proposed to conduct a fundraiser as well as a council member also, and to raise money for the sports field complex. And what was said was that they didn't know that the town of Kingsport had to pay any money for the ball field. So it just went on, and of course, if anybody wants to listen to that, they can, but it was a no-brainer, according to Mr. Smith, that they were going to be able to raise money. So that hasn't been done. I think we're putting the horse before the cart. We need to know how much money that they're going to donate or get fundraise from this project, for this project. We haven't engaged in conversation, to my knowledge, with the county to ask them if they want to contribute to this. The county student or children, I would imagine, is going to be playing on the ball field as well. So I'd like to hear from them. But this is a phenomenal economic downturn that we did not even plan on. We don't know when we're going to get money back together again to fund things. I'm under the impression the budget's cut. I'm worried about the core services, to just provide our residents for core services. I'm just not for it. I'm not going to be for that until we can pull our bootstraps up and see where we are. I was willing to go the $10 million, but I'm not going to do two extra additional $1 million till we investigate what Mr. Smith and what councilman can do to help us with fundraising.
Well, just, not to start an argument, I just want to clarify a few things. There has been some efforts made towards fundraising. I did not realize that I was supposed to let everybody know exactly when I approached fundraising, but that effort has been started. There have been conversations with the county. I apologize again if you haven't been involved in that. That's just, the nature of the beast. You got to start somewhere. The Rotary Club has the Rotary Frolic, they have already raised money in the tune of $100,000. I think we're getting a little too emotional about the reality of where we are. And like I said, I committed before, I said it on record, I would do some fundraising, and I have pursued some of that. It's difficult until you have a bid document that outlines exactly what each item is going to cost to get somebody to give money for a specific item. So we got to go through the steps to make sure that we have numbers to advertise to be able to get dollars from different organizations, just to clarify those particular items.
Well, that
Mr. Mayor, may I add something here?
Sure.
Do we have final plans for this project? Do we have an engineer's estimate? Now, I'm not suggesting that we spend no more money out there. I'm suggesting that we've got $10 million to spend, and that's what we should spend out there.
Al, to answer your questions, I don't think, we are close, I think, maybe I should let the staff answer that. All right, let Jimmy.
I'll go ahead and start, Mayor and Council. For the last couple months, we do have an engineer's estimate. For the last couple months, we've actually been working with our consulting engineers and staff, as well as we've had a couple meetings with the Rec Advisory Commission to actually scale back some the scope of work, and we still wanted to try to make it the best possible recreational complex that we could make it without taking out essential phases of the project. But we did make some changes. We were able to whittle away some maybe luxuries and not necessities, but we think we're close, and that the additional $2 million would give us what the original project I think was intended to do, at least not to do it all at one time. So we do have those cost estimates, and right now I believe it's close to the $12 million figure. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Councilmember Webb, because I know you were in some of those meetings, or if John, you want to say?
We have, like I said, just to clarify, the Rec Advisory Commission has been working very diligently. We've got a great crew to, just as Jimmy said, whittle away the things that are luxuries, make sure that we have the basic necessities that will supply our youth, as well as the county's youth, and any traveling teams that may perhaps come to the town and spend tax dollars with the facilities that are adequate in order to host those types of tournaments. So yeah, I mean, we've put hours and hours and hours into this. Again, my wife would love it if I didn't put so many hours into it, but we've worked very diligently to make sure this thing is a real possibility, and we're very, very, very close.
Do we have any minutes for the recreational committee? That I haven't seen any on our website or given presentations to the council. Is there any way we can see the minutes?
To be honest with you, I don't think we've really been taking minutes at this point in time, but we can start to take minutes. We haven't had a secretary per se to actually draft those.
I thought we talked about this last meeting, and
We haven't had a
Ms.
meeting
Pillion
since. Yeah, we haven't had a meeting
was,
since
okay,
then. Yeah.
okay. All right, but I do, want to say one more thing. During a work session, and I'm sorry I don't have the date, but I did ask about a report for that, and I didn't get one for the fundraising of this, and Councilman told me that it wasn't time yet. So I didn't know when the time would be to start. But I thought maybe it would be sooner rather than later. And now I'm not so sure that we're going to get so many funds with this pandemic that's still going on, and we have no idea when this is going to stop. I pray it stops. It's very sad for everyone in the world. So let's pray together, and hopefully it'll stop soon. But I'm tired of looking at the Sportsville complex like it is. I'd like to get it at least grass seeds sown on there or something done with it, and let the children go play on it when the governor releases them stay-at-home order. So something needs to be done, of course, but not $2 more million.
Okay. Is everybody else done? My turn. I agree with almost everything. In fact, I agree with everything that Derek said. I think that when this bond issue was issued, I wasn't on council, but I was around, and as I understood it, the council and Mr. Kelly all along referred to this as a potential sports complex. So if there is any idea out there that it was ever intended in the bond issue to build the facility that was presented to the public, I think that's an error. And I think in talking with the previous council, their idea all along was to issue more money as if it was needed for this sports complex. So I don't think it's irresponsible at all for us to proceed as Davenport has recommended and actually get the bids and know what we're talking about. We still have the option, if something tragic happens, such as the coronavirus shows up here in Abingdon, and there is a need to delay, that we still have the option of, as I understand it, of delaying the project until the town recovers from the disaster that may occur. So I'm in favor of proceeding exactly within the timetable and in the manner that Davenport recommended. Does that give you the guidance that you need?
Yeah, I think we have at least a consensus, and just so everybody realizes, we still have to prepare an ordinance and bring it back to the council that will just authorize this additional $2 million. So, and even when we adopt that ordinance, it's just the authorization to do so. So this is still going to be a couple months away, but before we worked on it with Davenport, we needed to make sure we had that direction from the council. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing, consideration of VDOT request for a permanent easement over a portion of Virginia Creeper Trail. Excuse me?
Go back to
You
the
need to go back
beginning.
to the beginning.
Public comments.
Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. This is very difficult with this moving of the agenda. Okay, the next item is public comments. I don't know how we proceed with that. I think I need to explain a few things. A quorum of, I need to tell everybody how we're operating. A quorum of council members is present. Based on the opinion of the Attorney General, the town must have a quorum of council members physically present to conduct business. The council is being live streamed by Town of Abingdon YouTube. The council chambers are closed to the public. However, citizens attending may address the town council during the public comment portion of the meeting or during a public hearing. Citizens have signed up to speak, and public comments will be directed to the Arthur Campbell Room one at a time. The public will be directed to Arthur Campbell Room one at a time, where their comments will be live streamed directly into the council chambers. Now, staff, I normally have a list of people that are signed up. Do we have people signed up?
No, there's no one here. No.
We have no public comments? Okay.
Currently, we have no one signed up.
Excuse me?
No one signed.
Okay. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Council, we can take these up all at one time. If there are no corrections, are there any corrections to these minutes?
I have a question on March 18th, Mayor, if I may.
Okay.
Okay. It says page 30 on March 18th work session, will be the second paragraph, and where Mr. Webb was speaking, and in his comments, it says it would be wise to tap into the extra $2 million. Maybe that might read an extra $2 million to make that clearer. Like we didn't have the $2 million. And I'm not trying to put any words in anybody's mouth, but we're asking for $2 million.
I think what he was referring to, and Mr. Webb said it, but it was the initial analysis that Davenport did included extra $2 million. He wasn't saying that we were borrowing it or that we had borrowed it, because we would, in their rating, have been approved up to that amount. Correct.
So the extra $2 million. So instead of the 10, it's the extra 2.
The extra, correct.
Okay. If you think that's clear, Mr. Bell, then we'll leave it as
Yes,
is.
ma'am, I think
All right.
that's what happened, and I believe that's what he said.
All right. That'll be
Thank you,
fine.
Ken.
Thank you.
Is there a motion that would approve all the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve February 19th, March the 2nd, March the 18th, and March the 26th for the minutes.
Motion by Ms. Quetch to approve all the minutes, February 19th, March 2nd, March 18th, March 26th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Webb. Any discussion? Kim, call a roll, please.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig.
Aye. The next item on the agenda is proclamations. We have none. The next item on the agenda is resolutions. And we have a resolution supporting the Thompson Drive and Stanley Street roundabout and Cook Street extension and for smart scale funding evaluation cycle. John Dew?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Here tonight to present to you the resolution of supporting the two projects that we are submitting for VDOT's Smart Scale funding and project program. The two projects, I think you're certainly familiar with one. We've submitted it in previous Smart Scale rounds unsuccessfully with no funding to this point, but it's the Cook Street Extension Project, and it's slated to go from the end of existing Cook Street west of Cummings Street over to Stone Mill Road. And that's been a project that's been in our sights for quite a few years, ever since Smart Scale started. If you'll remember, originally we submitted it as Frenchmore Boulevard extension to go all the way from the Tech Park to Cook Street. We have realized through these unsuccessful rounds that our best strategy at the moment is to submit it as we currently have it, going over to Stone Mill. Hopefully in the future be able to make that full extension over to Stone Mill Business and Tech Park. The other project is Thompson Drive and Stanley Street. If you're familiar with that location, it's right at Abingdon High School and the Washington County School Board. It's that intersection there. It is shown by VDOT's information and GIS safety data to be an issue there as far as number of accidents that happen at that intersection. Obviously, it sees its peak traffic during school times, both early in the morning and in the afternoon. The project we are submitting would construct a roundabout at that intersection, which would have continuous flow aspects to it, and hopefully reduce the accidents. It is one of the types of intersections that is recommended by VDOT to alleviate that sort of a problem. And so those are the two projects. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to try to answer them. But this is a requirement in the process, in the Smart Scale process, is to get a resolution from council supporting the projects.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Sal?
I would move that we approve these two projects, pass them on to VDOT.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Bradley to approve the resolution, second by Ms. Patterson. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Al?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dew.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution to encourage support for the mutual aid and cooperation agreement for law enforcement services by and between the town of Abingdon, Virginia, and the county of Washington, Virginia. Mr. Morani.
Yes, this is just a standard mutual aid agreement that the county has provided to us, and they'll be adopting the same in similar form. So it just needs to be adopted by the council periodically.
I make a motion that we adopt the resolution to encourage support for the mutual aid and cooperation agreement for law enforcement services by and between the town of Abingdon, Virginia, and the county of Washington, Virginia.
Motion by Vice Mayor Patterson to approve the resolution, second by Mr. Bradley. Is there any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye. The next item on the agenda is a resolution extending the suspension of sewer disconnections. Mr. Morani.
Yes, you may recall that the town council had previously adopted a resolution to suspend disconnections of sewer service, and that is due to expire at the end of this month. So this is just a proposed amended resolution, and it's the council's will if they want to make it for an additional month or to go beyond that. My recommendation would just be to make it for an additional month, and then we could just take it up at the next meeting if we need to continue that, and just put it through the end of the next month, so through May 31st, and then we are meeting, the next meeting we would have will be May 18th, so if we want to reevaluate it then, we could still extend it another month after that, so.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Any questions?
I'd like to make a motion that we make the resolution extending the suspension of sewer disconnections to May 31st, I believe, Mr. Moraney.
Yeah, I think that would be right, yeah.
Amended resolution. I think you called it an amended resolution.
Yeah, it's an amended resolution, because the first one said April
An amended
30th.
resolution.
Motion by Ms. Patterson to approve the amended resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Webb. Any discussion?
I'd like to thank Mr. Moraney for helping the citizens out by doing this. Thank you very kindly.
Any further discussion?
Still your decision.
What?
Still your decision, so I think everybody, it's the right thing to do at this time, so.
Okay.
Well, you're
I
doing a
agree.
great job.
Okay, Kim, call a roll, please.
Mr. Bradley.
Didn't hear you.
Mr. Bradley.
I saw his mouth, he said aye, but I can't hear him.
Aye.
All right, all right.
Ms. Wedge.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson. And Mayor Craig.
We got you, Al.
I just want to make a comment, Mayor. In Camp, just so everybody knows, there actually has been a state, the Regulatory Commission, that there are some other, that they have actually come down and said that other authorities or utility companies cannot disconnect. So this is also going in conjunction with that. We're not named in that. I don't know how long that was too, but so we're not doing anything that anybody else isn't doing also. So I think everybody's following suit, and the Regulatory Commission has said the same for those. Yeah.
The State Corporation Commission regulates certain utilities, and it's put in order for specific utilities, but Washington County Service Authority and the town aren't specifically in that order, so that's why we're doing
Okay.
separate.
I think it's the right thing to do.
I think everybody agrees.
Yes, everybody agrees.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing, consideration of VDOT request for a permanent easement over a portion of the Creeper Trail. Mr. Dew.
Okay. Hello again. Mayor Craig, want to compliment you on your lip reading skills to get Al's vote there.
Well, you speak up. I don't want to read your lips.
Here before you again, we've had conversations about this request from VDOT to have a perpetual easement, permanent easement over a portion of the Virginia Creeper Trail right-of-way that we maintain. And it's in conjunction with their current Route 58 project, the last phase of the project to go. It includes 2 new bridges over the South Fork of the Holston, just a little bit east of the current bridge location. Have gone out there and taken a look at the site. Their request is for an easement of approximately 600, a little over 600 feet of the right-of-way that we have for the Creeper Trail in that area for the construction and permanent maintenance of those bridge structures. So Mr. Bell has been working closely with the Attorney General's office on the wording of the easement, and I don't know if you'd like to comment any on the status of the discussions between the two of you.
Sure. Can you hear me? Can they hear me? Yeah. We've talked a few times with the Attorney General, and then Andrew Fleener with VDOT has been talking with Mr. Dew. I think the questions from our side are just some of the particular language and the scope of the distance on the trail of it. And what seems to be from VDOT's side is that they just want to hedge their bets that they have enough room to construct the superstructure. As John has said, it's going to be a big bridge and very high, and so they're probably gonna need more room than maybe otherwise would. But also, it seems more just for their convenience to be able to come and go and maintain it and that sort of thing, that they have maybe more than what they need. And so we're gonna have a discussion with them about whether we can narrow the scope of that before we approve it. Thus far, they've been willing to work with us, but they've said that they will cooperate, but they haven't been that willing to change their actual language. So we're just trying to clarify that for future generations, that everybody knows what they're talking about. And I think the gist of it is, what they really mean is, up in the sky, they want all these rights, and really not so much on the ground. And our concern, of course, is that the Creeper Trail stays open as much as it can during construction and afterwards. So that's what we're going to talk to them about.
And I will add one more thing about, if you haven't had a chance to go out there and look at the location, but the length of the easement, it does seem, certainly looking at the drawing we prepared for you, it looks rather lengthy for that construction. I will remind you that the bridges are approximately 80 feet, and 80 to 85 feet in the air above the river. But the two ends of the easement that they're requesting are at the two locations where the existing road, Drowning Ford Road, is about at the same grade as the Creeper Trail. So if you can imagine, during any kind of construction or maintenance operation, it's going to be the most convenient access point to get from an existing roadway to the bridge location. So I think that was, I think that went a long way in their choice of the termini for the easement request. If there are any other questions?
Any other questions, council?
Good job, Tom.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mayor,
Yes, Al?
I only get part of the discussion here, but is this ready for us to approve?
No.
Okay.
The idea, Al, is that there's language in the easement agreement that, that our staff thinks should be negotiated, and it hasn't been negotiated as yet. And they have a conference call tomorrow to sit down and talk about it, make sure that all the town's rights to the Creeper Trail are preserved completely, and matters such as that, technical issues, so to speak. So it's just a negotiation of the wording of the easement.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand you very well, but some of the others I can't hear.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So, at this point, I'll declare the public hearing open. If we have speakers, would you please come forward and state your name and address, and please restrict your comments to 3 minutes as much as possible. Do we have any speakers?
He's checking. No speakers, sir.
Okay, since we have no speakers, I declare the public hearing closed. This, since we're still negotiating the easement, no action is required on the matter. The next item is a public hearing / first reading of an ordinance. Amendment to Part 2 Code Appendix B zoning ordinance, Article 8. Mr. Moran.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This is just a cleanup of our town code. We have been referring to this body as the Historic Preservation Review Board for a long time, and they've even adopted bylaws to that effect. We just happen to have it under a different name under the code, and we were going through the code and trying to clean up some areas, and that's all this does. But because it is part of the zoning code, we are just required to have the public hearing, so.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Moran?
How long have they been operating under an assumed name?
Looks like it, Al.
A good while.
All right, I declare the public hearing open. If we have any speakers, will you please come forward, make your comments, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and state your name and address.
No speakers, sir.
Since we have no speakers, I declare the public hearing closed. Council, I'll entertain a motion to,
Shall this proposal be rejected?
I'll enter, oh, I'm confused from the notes I wrote this morning. We don't have to wait a second. I need help here.
Cam's coming.
This is the first reading.
I have a note to waive the,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Since we have our newly adopted ordinance by which we can waive the second reading, and this is just an amendment of the wording, I would entertain a motion for the mayor to entertain that this be adopted and waive the second reading.
okay. I'll entertain a motion that this be adopted and waive the second reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Webb. You guys are really confusing, you know that?
There's been a lot going on. I didn't realize we were going to try to waive the second reading on that. I don't think we're going to have a groundswell of
That's
opposition
okay.
to
That's just
renaming.
my notes from this morning. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Webb. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Vice Mayor Patterson. Any discussion? Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Quett.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the first reading of an ordinance amendment to Part 2, Code Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Planning Commission, Division 2. Mr. Moran.
Mr. Mayor and the council, this is this was generated from a discussion we had at a previous council meeting regarding the composition of the planning commission. The desire was to not have the town manager as an active member of the planning commission. So what this does is it does remove the town manager as a participant or a member of the planning commission, but it also makes it permissive, not required to have a council member on there. So if in the future at some point the council doesn't want to have one of their own on the planning commission, that is not a requirement. So it just says one may instead of shall. So those are the two changes to this section of the town code. I don't have any objection if we waive the second reading on this one either. It's really up to the council if they want to do that. It's fine with me, so I'll leave it up to you guys to make that decision. So.
Okay, I have a note that, if I remember our discussion this morning on the agenda, it's better that we have the second reading. Is that your opinion, Mr. Bell?
I thought I had it the other way around, but if I do not see a need to dispense with the second reading on this one. I thought we were doing it the other way around, but.
He's changed his mind on both of them, so whatever you
Well,
want to do.
no, maybe I just forgot. Maybe I didn't change my mind, I just forgot. No, I have no objections. Okay,
You need
all
to
right.
take notes.
I apologize.
'Cause
No,
I
we can,
forgot too.
I don't think it's, either way it's fine. If we want to just
Okay.
go through second reading,
All
it's
right.
fine, so.
Any questions?
I'll have a,
Now,
Go ahead,
go
Al.
ahead, Al.
does this leave the planning commission with 6 members, even numbered?
No, Al, what we're doing is taking the requirement out of the code that the town manager be on the planning commission. And so he'll be replaced with a citizen, and it will still have a 7-member, that's the way I understand it.
That's correct, yeah.
And,
Good, okay.
okay, all right. You're
Now-
clear?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and I think the intention is to continue to advertise for for potential vacancy. We did that in advance, and that way, if this does get approved at the next meeting, we would have potentially somebody to consider immediately, so there wouldn't be a delay in not having representation, so, okay.
Mr. Moran, would you be prepared to kind of give a little synopsis, tiny one, as to pro and con of a manager being on the commission?
Yeah, I believe it's inappropriate to have a member of staff on there because, not to say that it's not necessarily illegal to do it, or I just don't think it's best practice because many times the planning commission is going to look at staff to give advice and to give an analysis, and it needs to be objective. And so if I have, for instance, the director of planning, Jason Boswell, up there giving a presentation to the planning commission or giving his opinion, and I, as his supervisor, I am sitting on the panel, And it also might be perceived that me as the town manager has more influence over decisions that are being made or recommendations coming from the planning commission. I think it's important to not have the town manager there for those reasons, and I think it's very rare that you'll see a member of staff. You do see elected officials on those advisory boards, more often than staff. In fact, I've never seen staff on there before, but it is allowed. It's not anything that's inconsistent with statute, but I just don't think it's best practice. So,
Thank you
all
for
right.
that, appreciate it.
Can I address that question?
Yeah, sure, Al.
There was a time long ago when the planning commission did everything. They did the recreation programs, they did a whole bunch of other things. And they were always running up against what kind of money do we have in the budget. And the town manager was put on there to explain the budget primarily as a convenience to the planning commission. So it's not really a necessity to have him on there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Al, for that explanation. Okay, council, is there any other questions or comments? Okay, shall the proposal be rejected? Okay, we can move forward with the matter, and I assume it'll be placed on the.
Yes, sir.
Second reading will be on the next meeting. Okay, we don't have any second readings, consideration of bids, we don't have any bids. Next item is reports from the town manager and his staff. This is Mr. Morani, this is a budget work session and presentation of the draft 2021 budget.
Yes, that's correct. Stephanie Davis is participating via video conference, and we've got a presentation for the council, and she is going to lead that discussion and give the presentation. And I think the format she's going to utilize is she is going to try to pause at the end of each slide if there's any questions that the council might have, and obviously I'm available to answer any questions, as well as Stephanie and John do as well. So. Yeah. Stephanie Davis. Everybody knows Stephanie? Okay. We do. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Stephanie.
I think
Hi,
everybody knows
Stephanie.
Stephanie. Yeah. Oh, the public. Okay. This is for the public's purposes. I'm sorry. This is Stephanie Davis. She's working with the town on a consulting basis. But Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself instead of me doing it?
Sure, and I will say up front, I am having a little bit of trouble hearing you guys, so I may need to have you repeat questions and that sort of thing. So I'm Stephanie Davis. I'm an assistant professor of practice with Virginia Tech. I run the local government management program, but in my former life, I was a finance, HR, and IT director, so basically an assistant county administrator, and worked in local government for about 20 years. And the financial realm is really my interest, and I am thrilled to be able to help the town of Abingdon, with your budget process this year. It's been a hard one, but I'm very pleased that I've been able to help you guys.
Okay. I think we're ready then. Go ahead.
Okay, so the town council should have a copy of a presentation we've developed. The first slide is just, this is your fiscal year 2021 proposed budget for your consideration. We'll move to the next slide. I wanted to give you just a little bit of background on the budget development process. So the finance committee has reviewed every department's line item budget through a process of department head meetings. We met March 31st and April 9th. Each department director came before the finance committee. The finance committee had all line item details, and they were able to go through the individual budgets and really talk about the needs, especially given the financial situation of not only the town, but truly all local governments here in the state. The town council will consider the advertised budget with a first reading, and your public hearing will be held on May 18th. So we are able to recommend a proposed budget and then have you all consider that at your public hearing on May 18th. Your second reading and adoption will be on June 15th. And just for the public, remember this budget is effective July 1 through June 30 of 21. Any questions on that slide at this time?
Any questions, council? No
No
questions, Stephanie.
questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for helping me with that. Your next slide is kind of our key priorities, and there wasn't a lot for us to start in terms of new programs, new budget numbers, anything like that. We really worked with Davenport to ensure that we're maintaining and protecting your fund balance. I did want to correct myself before we move forward. Your unassigned fund balance as of June 30 last year was $5,095,000. Your policy is $5 million. So we really want to protect your fund balance, not only for financial management, but also for cash flow purposes, given that we don't know what the environment is going to be in terms of revenues coming in during the fiscal year. So your budget is balanced, and it is not using fund balance as a source to balance your budget, which is an excellent thing. And that was our main priority going into the budget development process as well. And certainly we are recognizing and addressing potential revenue impacts related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we have adjusted significantly for local revenues. I will go through that in just a second. And correspondingly, we've done the same on the expenditure side. We've been very conservative and think that's in the best interest of the town. And remember, we have significant reductions to meals and lodging taxes due to our stay-at-home orders and non-essential business closings. We have been conservative, but that also allows the council to come back during the fiscal year and make adjustments to the budget if things are looking better than what we had anticipated. Or conversely, if things look worse, you can come back during the fiscal year and make amendments to your adopted budget. Any questions on that so far?
Any questions, council?
I just want to say for the public's sake, fund balance is also what Mr. Davenport and Associates said, unassigned fund balance. So it's a rainy day fund again, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. Slide number 4, in addition to the revenues and expenditures adjustments, I've worked with town staff and Mr. Morani to really think about structural improvements to your budget. We've created a capital projects fund where all of your capital projects are now accounted for in a separate fund away from your general fund budget. It makes things a lot easier for your staff, for you, for transparency purposes. We'll be able to track capital projects through that fund, associate how much of your general fund dollars are going towards those projects. And as Davenport said, this also gives the opportunity, if needed, worst case scenario, we know what capital projects we could roll into a short-term or long-term note. Again, that's just kind of a side note, but the good thing is we now have a capital projects fund effective July 1 that we're able to account for those capital projects really better. We've also created a street maintenance fund to track street improvements. Those projects are funded through VDOT revenue sharing programs and pay-as-you-go cash contributions from the general fund. Now you will be able to see all of your projects that are being funded through VDOT revenue sharing programs, VDOT maintenance funds. It is really very good for accounting and transparency purposes, and make sure that you're using the funds that are coming in to their capacity. And then we've also captured all of your debt service expenditures, including your lease purchase agreements. And there are a number of, which is fine, lease purchase agreements. They count towards your debt capacity and debt affordability. So now we have moved those debt service expenses associated with your lease purchase programs with the debt service department. And so we're able to capture all of that into one separate department. It makes tracking easier and makes accountability and transparency much easier as well. So we have done a lot in this budget structurally to enhance it. Any questions on that?
Any questions, council? I'll just make one comment that I find it much easier to understand the budget with those changes, so thank you for doing that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's go to slide number 5. So this is the big picture. I use my hands a lot. This is the big picture of your budget. So what I'm showing you here is what was adopted last year, what's proposed for fiscal year, or the current year, what's proposed for fiscal year 21, and the variance. That variance means what did you do for the current year, what's your total now, and then what's the difference. So what you'll see, number one, I want everyone to see this, is that your budget is balanced as proposed as required by state code. You have a general fund budget, and your revenues and expenditures are balanced, and the amount being proposed is $10,874,582. That's a reduction of $2.8 million. In your capital projects fund, we've gone from 7.68 to 8.45, an increase of $797,000. We'll talk about that increase and the funding source associated with that. Your street maintenance fund, we've separated out the expenses in the current year and the revenues in the current year to be able to compare to what's proposed for your fiscal year 21 budget. That variance is $435,000. We'll talk about what that includes. And then your wastewater fund, going from $3.4 million to $4.8 million, a $1.4 million increase. Again, we'll talk about that in detail. The second part of that table is the expenditures. And again, your expenditures and your revenues are balanced, and it's balanced by fund. Any questions on that?
Any questions, council? No questions, go ahead.
Thank you. So let's talk about revenues first. So slide 6, we have that same kind of big picture perspective on the revenues going from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21 proposed, and the variance, we just kind of went over that. So I'm just going to go to the next slide, slide 7. The first thing we want to talk about is the general fund revenues. So general fund revenues are going from $13.6 million to a proposed of $10.8 million. That's a $2.8 million reduction. Some of those decreases are related to grant funds that are now, that were one-time grants in fiscal year 20. Those revenues are offset with the corresponding expenditures as well. The COVID-19 reductions, we have a table for you. So at this point, we are projecting a 10% reduction on sales tax. This is a fiscal year impact of $51,000 in reduction in revenue. Lodging tax at 35% reduction, $313,000. Your meals tax reduction at 35% reduction at $1.1 million. Business license tax at 10% of $93,000. And then we have fees associated with the Coons Recreation Center, $435,000, 100%. And again, this is because of the closure related to the COVID-19. In total, we have a $2.8 million revenue shortfall. I will tell you, and this is assuming the entire fiscal year impact. As I said before, if things change, the council can always come back and do an amended budget to increase revenues. We have had weekly calls with over 100 local governments here in Virginia, including towns, cities, and counties. We are kind of all on the same sheet of music, especially in towns such as Abingdon with so much tourism and visitors. So that is the revenue picture at this point on the general fund side. I'll stop and have you all ask questions.
Any questions, council?
You answered my question already.
You answered Vice Mayor's question, so that's good. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you very much. We'll move to slide number 8. This is your capital projects fund revenue. The capital projects fund is funded with loan proceeds, a general fund transfer, and a short-term loan for your radio system. You can see that loan proceeds, we're assuming about $586,000 in additional revenue. The radio system, your short-term loan is $530,000. Your general fund transfer, if you recall, part of what we're trying to do is capture how much are you using cash, pay-as-you-go general fund contribution towards your capital projects. That amount is $455,000, and that is roughly about a 5% contribution, which is an excellent contribution in terms of general fund. Rating agencies like to see that local governments are using some level of cash or general fund dollars to pay for capital projects, so that's excellent. The changes are $797,000, and one revenue that we did take out and reduce for next year is the donation piece. $775,000 that we had in the current year budget that we don't expect to have that for next year's budget. However, if you do get donations in next year's budget after July 1, the council can always come back and reappropriate those funds and the associated expenditure, or reduce the reliance on debt or whatever it might be, however you all want to handle that. But we did think it was appropriate not to assume that level of donations for fiscal year 21. Any questions?
Yes, Stephanie, I have questions. So if you don't mind, would you state for the public, the radio systems, or I can state it, radio systems are for the police department. That's a core service and we really need that.
And fire department.
And fire department. Thank you, Mr. Moraney. So
That's correct. That's your public safety radio system. And it, as you said, that is for a public safety need. That's
Right.
correct.
Okay, and then just to make sure that the public knows what the donations, what you're speaking of is for the sports field complex donations. And they have been kind of tagged onto our budget back in the day, last year, maybe the prior year as well, of $775,000. So now they're removed, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add something onto that, Vice Mayor Patterson. We were trying to put together a worst-case scenario budget, so we know that there's probably going to be some. We don't know how many, so that's why we did eliminate them. There are things in the project like the scoreboard or things that we think we can get sponsorships for, but under these economic conditions, we just don't know. We're hopeful, so that's why we did remove that as a revenue stream, but we're hopeful we can get those, some of those at least.
Okay.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll turn to page 9, the revenues for the street maintenance fund. Again, the projects associated in the street maintenance fund are typically VDOT funded. There is a small portion of general fund dollars that is going to that fund. That is for your Main and Pecan Street project. We have increased revenues associated with the Park Street project. Those are grant funds. VDOT Street Maintenance Fund, increase of about $24,000, and then you transfer from the general fund. So your change from last year to this year is $435,000. Again, only $50,000 of that is general fund transfer. The rest are projects funded with VDOT money. So that explains that increase. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This may be a question for John Dew, but the $360,000 or so for the the Park Street project, does that mean that the project isn't going to be complete?
Can I explain that, Mayor?
Yeah, please explain that.
This column is a variance column. What that's saying is we're going to spend, last year we only budgeted about 1.2 million. This year, or we're expecting 1.2 million in revenue. This year we're expecting 1.5. So that's what that number represents. So
I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is a very accounting strong document, and so it took me a little while as a non-accountant
Okay.
to, but yeah, that hopefully answers your question,
Okay,
so.
all right, thank you. Any other questions, council? Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. We'll move to slide 10, which is the proposed water fund revenue, The majority of the increase, the $1.4 million, is from loan proceeds to fund your system improvements related to inflow and infiltration. The revenue from your sewer service is pretty much level funded. I know that there has been discussions about rate increases. Those discussions will come up during the fiscal year. Mr. Morani will bring that back to you. We have $1.3 million increase in loan proceeds. The sewer service revenue increasing about $92,000. And again, that's just usage. And then other revenue, $13,000. So about a $1.4 million increase. Again, much of that is debt proceeds and the associated capital projects with the inflow and infiltration project. Any questions?
Any questions, council? No questions, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We are now going to, so that gives you the overview of the revenues for the town's proposed fiscal year 21 budget. We'll move to the expenditure side. I've kind of gone through slide 11, so we'll move on to the next one. This slide, and I know it's a lot of information, we won't go through every single line unless you all have questions, but my goal is for you to be able to see what did you adopt in the current year, what are the proposed changes, and what's the bottom line for what we're proposing for your expenditure side in the general fund. So this takes you from FY20 adopted, all of the various changes that have occurred during the budget development process to your proposed budget. I want to highlight just a few things for you. For your non-departmental allocations, after discussion with the Finance Committee, all have been eliminated. So there is a reduction of $372,000. We had a large decrease for the Creeper Trail project. Just remember that's offset with revenue. So that's not necessarily a decrease to the expenditures because you have a corresponding decrease to the revenues. Some of the other ones you can kind of see the reductions that we've done, recreation, some tourism reductions. We also have some expenditures planned. I did want to highlight the restricted contingency funds. This amount gives you some level of cushion if revenues are more than the 35% that we have adjusted for. If there are items that come up during the budget after July 1 that you need to fund, whether it's, I'll make this up, a boiler that goes out, or any kind of repairs or maintenance, we do have those contingency funds there that we built the budget on. It's not a lot, but it does demonstrate the council's recognition that you have some sort of contingency. The changes from fiscal year 20 to 21 total $2.8 million. And again, keep in mind, some of that is offset with revenue. Green Springs Road realignment and your Creeper Trail project. Are there any questions on this particular slide? I would assume this is the biggest one.
Any questions? Cindy has, Vice Mayor Patterson has a question.
Okay, a couple of questions for you, Stephanie. Thank you so much. The Creeper Trail project, is that taking the bridge, or what is that 94, almost 795,000 offset there? What is that?
Mr. Morani, can you?
Yeah, sure. That was for the Watauga project, so that was a large project, and it was just labeled in the spreadsheet as the Creeper Trail project. So since we had corresponding revenue along with that, that's why it's coming off, so.
So.
Yeah, so since we're not doing the project this year.
The Watauga project.
Yeah, the Watauga
okay,
project,
all right.
yeah.
And so we're non-departmental allocations, we're not gonna fund any of the non-departmentals at $372,090.
That's the proposal of the Finance Committee, yeah.
Okay, proposal of the fund man. And also, before we go any further, I'm used to seeing these line by line, you know, kind of like, well, you can't see this, but the line items. And with all due respect, we have 2 council members on our finance committee, but it's also ultimately up to the whole council. And I'm hoping that we'll have the entire budget line item, what they decided to take off and leave on, so we can kind of see where they went with that. This is the first time I've seen something like this. I mean, it is easier, but I'd like to look at the line items as well. Is that gonna be available, Mr. Marini?
This is right here. It's right behind it.
Yeah, but I mean, we had a book this thick with all the line items. You know, we've had them in the past year after year after year, so
She's talking about
the whole budget.
We'll get a copy of the whole budget, won't we all?
before it's adopted.
Yeah, this is.
Once it's adopted.
didn't print a whole entire book.
And did we put this on the internet for the public yet?
It will be though, if
Okay.
you want to, these were, once again, these were some last minute changes.
Okay. It would be easier for the public to go along with this while
Yeah,
our
it's
meeting.
actually gonna be incorporated into the packet, we're gonna re-upload the packet with these
Okay.
documents.
That's
But
terrific.
we had to, make some last minute changes.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go
we
ahead.
haven't included money for the housing authority or to help out poor people, potentially, and poor and moderate income people. Is that gonna go by the boards also? I hate to see that lost.
I agree, Al, but I think that's the proposal is consistent, I think, and we have, the Budget Committee has eliminated all non-departmental expenses.
And does that include Meals on Wheels and the?
Yes, it includes all the non-departmental
non-departmental.
organizations of the town. So it would include all the nonprofits that submitted applications.
Well, I'd remind you that the Abingdon Redevelopment and Housing Authority is a part of the town of Abingdon.
I understand what you're saying, Al. We kind of went back and forth with this at the Finance Committee level. Quite frankly, that is really going to be up to the council. I understand both sides. I understand the reasoning to separate them from the non-departmentals because they are a quasi-governmental entity. But with the budget situation, I also understand the council's desire if they want to remove them. So that's really going to be your decision if you want to continue with that or not. But if you do want to, I think there could be some justification for funding them. But I'll leave that up to you.
And there was a couple more agencies that I didn't mention, Feeding Southwest Virginia and Faith in Action as well.
Yeah.
So that's also recommended to cut that budget, cut them out of the budget.
One idea I have, Al, in that regard is the contingency that's been proposed, if I understand it correctly, is substantially more than we had in this year's budget. I believe we had a contingency of around 75,000.
Well, that's a little different, Mayor. What this is, what we're proposing here is a contingency fund that's restricted. And so really what that is it's really sort of like a fiscal year rainy day fund in the event that we need it to stay within that $5 million balance. We actually did eliminate, I believe we eliminated or drastically reduced the council contingency.
We did.
Let's see what that was. I'm
We
trying to
did.
remember what we did. We did put something in there.
25.
25,000, I believe.
But what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
if the council's comfortable with reducing either contingency, we could possibly.
Yeah, you could do whatever you want to later in the year if you want to,
So
or amend the budget, yeah.
that's up to us. Am I
Yeah.
correct about that?
Ultimately, during the fiscal year, if you desire to amend the budget based on economic conditions, you have the ability to do that, absolutely. Yeah. This is just a worst-case scenario budget that we're trying to.
What I'm asking is we can, or what I think is correct, we can direct that we take out, that we reduce either of those contingencies and fund what many consider essential things like the housing authority. Is that right?
I'm trying to understand what.
In other words,
We can't, we can spend those, I mean, the money hasn't been budgeted.
right.
So we can amend the budget to do that. Is that what you mean?
I think that's what.
That's exactly what I'm.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought I was saying.
And again,
Yeah,
I think everybody needs to realize this is just a first draft, everybody trying to understand what's going on with the budget, worst case scenario.
But that doesn't happen during the year, that happens before the budget's approved, that's my point.
oh, are you talking about the contingency funds that are remaining in the current year's budget?
Both?
I think he's
You're
just
gonna,
saying.
all this is a proposal. You're gonna pass a budget,
Right.
and that will be the budget. That's
Right.
what you're saying.
And you're saying add money into the budget for that particular circumstance, which I totally understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, we wrestled very, very difficultly, that's probably not the right word, with all of that stuff. It's
There's
very-
flexibility for the
Sure.
council before this budget is adopted.
Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely, before the budget's adopted. One thing we need to realize, though, is we do have to publish the budget for a public hearing. So if we do that, I believe, Stephanie, you could chime in here, we can't have an increase in the budget after it's been proposed, is that correct? Or after it's been published?
You can't increase once it's been advertised. However, I think, Mr. Mayor, if I'm correct in understanding you, you're saying, let's take a look at our contingency that we have planned for fiscal year 21, both the restricted funds and anything in town council, and we could reduce that contingency to increase the contribution to those agencies. That could be done.
That is exactly what I'm saying, Stephanie.
See, I understand now that she explained it that way.
I'm sorry, I can't explain.
You meant to reduce the contingency that we were putting in there. Okay, I get it.
All right, that's all right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Al?
I'd like to say that I certainly appreciate the work that's gone into this on the town manager's part, Stephanie's part, and the finance part. However, I would love to see some continued funding for the housing authority and Meals on Wheels and some of the services for our poorer citizens, if it's possible.
Okay, thank you, Al. I tend to agree with you on that. Is that complete your presentation, Stephanie?
I don't think so.
No.
She's got
Okay,
some
all
more.
right, go ahead, then.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, did you want me to
Yes.
to proceed?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so, Mr. Morani and I can get together and look at those, lines tomorrow and those amounts. Slide number 13 reconciles, your capital projects fund. Remember, we've moved our revenues and moved our expenditures. The variance is $797,000. You can see the different projects that are funded, the ones that have come out, the ones that have been put in there. We did reclassify the lease payments to the debt service, so we did want you to see that. IT expenses include the increase for the new public safety radios, the police department to purchase 3 patrol vehicles, partially funded with asset forfeiture funds. Noting that no police vehicles were purchased in the current year. And then the Fields Penthouse project, the second phase, includes the interior renovations and site improvements. Any questions on the capital projects fund?
Just a quick question, if you don't mind, about reclassifying the lease payments to debt service. Lease payments being leasing the vehicles?
There was a lease budgeted for, and I apologize if I get this wrong, a dump truck, a brush truck. There was a lease payment associated with an IT software, I believe, and I can get you this level of detail tomorrow. But basically, we don't want, and I will do that. Basically, we don't want to show those lease payments in the capital projects fund. We want to show them in the general fund with all debt service. So really, it's just moving it from one fund to the other. There was no increase, no decrease, just shifting that in there. And I can get you what those lease purchase arrangements were for tomorrow, that detail.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes, ma'am. I'm like, David, let me make my notes. Purchase agreements and what they're for. Okay, any other questions on 13?
Any questions, council?
No.
No questions, go
Yeah,
ahead,
just,
Stephanie.
that was for the brush truck, the one that Stephanie was referring to was for the brush truck, yeah, the lease.
Oh, did you hear that, Stephanie? Mr. Moran, said that was the brush truck.
Yes, I knew it was some kind of truck.
Right.
A big truck.
You've got a good memory.
Thank you.
Slide number 14 is the reconciliation for your street maintenance fund. Again, remember, most of these projects, almost all of them except for $50,000 was, is VDOT money. So that's not town money. You can see we've got, VDOT funds for $49,000, the Park Street project at $336, and your main preliminary engineering at $50,000. Your Park Street project, it is funded 98% with VDOT money, so 2% coming in from the town. Any questions on those?
Any questions, council?
No.
No questions, go ahead.
Okay, and then, slide number 15, shows the proposed wastewater fund. Again, most of your projects are related to improvements due to your infiltration and inflow system. Operating expenses are relatively, flat. If the debt service is slightly increased, it'll be increased in the following year due to the loan proceeds and having to pay that debt service, but that'll be in fiscal year 22. Any questions?
Any questions, council?
No, but I'd just like to say, Stephanie, this is excellent presentation, and we appreciate you so much.
Yes, thank you for your hard
Absolutely.
work.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much. You have another slide, next steps and
The,
questions.
the only other slide I had was next steps and questions. I will tell you, one thing, I appreciate your comments. I do think your budget will be somewhat easier to present here going forward with the creation of those new funds. I think it will certainly help you guys, and we'll make sure you have the line item detail. Any other questions for me?
Any questions, council?
Not
I
tonight.
have a question for Mr. Morandi on our draft budget summary in the book here. On legislation, $70,000, I was reading over that. Well, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's more than that. No, it's not. Hold on. I'm not following the line. Yeah, legislative, $70,652,
What page are you on?
page 1.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like, it's right here, right there. Right there.
Is she looking at this?
It's the
The
draft
It's
draft.
the one in the packet, I think.
in the packet.
Oh, the one in the packet. Okay,
That's
I was
the
looking at the one.
draft advertisement.
Oh, I'm sorry, the draft advertisement, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Stephanie, maybe you can explain how those are categorized, that we're required to structure those by statute. They don't match up exactly with our budget. They have to get them into categories, kind of like when you do an audit. So maybe Stephanie can explain why those categories are like that.
It's a big summary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we report to the auditor of public accounts, both in terms of your audit, there are reporting requirements. In fact, there's a big thick manual that I just sent Brenda last week to say that your general ledger has to be set up this way, your advertisement has to be set up this way. Those categories are defined by the auditor of public accounts with the state. And so we don't have a lot of option in terms of how we advertise and how we set up our general ledger. So for your purposes, legislative is actually town council. So y'all are the legislative body. You'll see you have general and financial administration. That's the town administration's budget, your finance director's budget, all included in that. We can give you a reconciliation of what's included in those different categories, but quite frankly, we have to abide by the way the APA says we have to advertise and prepare the budget by category.
Okay. I just wanted a breakdown because I didn't know it was that expensive, and I was trying to do that without a breakdown, and I'm like, with breakdowns in the past, so I didn't get that. I didn't get that quite like I wanted it?
So a couple things, this is the same structure of your advertisement from last year. I did not, do anything new. So your proposed looks like it was proposed last year. And then the second thing is I can absolutely get you that detail tomorrow to show you what departments were added into what, appropriation categories.
That's terrific, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It is confusing. It tends to be a little confusing.
One thing I wanted to say is that we do, now that I understand what the mayor was asking, I would prefer we make, at least a few recommendations and give Stephanie and me some direction on how to do this, because I don't know if it will necessarily change the budget ad per se, but it might give us a little bit direction to finalize the budget document, at least in that regard, as it pertains to the line items regarding the non-departmentals. We don't have to right now, but I just thought it would be helpful for us to prepare for that.
I understand exactly what you're saying, because we wrestled with this, and the difficulty that Donna and I had when we talked about it is how do you pick and choose which one to fund?
Well,
And
I think Al's question is, to answer that, I think Al's question is, Al, say what's been done in the past and the relationship of the housing authority to the town, because I really don't know that. You've been on the housing authority, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
The town has contributed money to the housing authority for them to use to help people who need, for instance, a roof on their house and can't afford it, or bathroom repairs, or something that they can't finance themselves. And that money has been very useful and been very helpful to people of a low and moderate income. And I would certainly like to see that continue.
Is there any obligation, Al, for us to fund that, or is it, do you know, is there, you said kind of like it's a quasi-town HUD relationship. Is there any understanding or requirement that we fund the housing authority?
I don't think there's a formal agreement to that effect, Mr. Mayor. But the town has in the past always contributed a certain level of money. I don't remember exactly how much right now, to the housing authority for them to use for these projects that pop up from time to time. And they are very frequent and they are very necessary to people.
Okay, thank you. I understand what you're saying. I think that maybe what we need to do is for all of us to realize what you all are faced with. And I think we might want to each council member prepare a list of what you consider to be essential non-departmental funding. And like Ms. Patterson I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it's almost essential to at least look at Meals on Wheels.
I agree with you.
So what about, council, what about if we all submit a list for the Budget Committee? Stephanie, do you think that would be helpful of what we consider to be essential non-departmental expenditures? And I know that's, different people have different ideas about that, but that if we match up on certain things, it'll at least give you a guide of how to proceed with that. Is there any other, what do you all think about that, council? Could we do that?
I've got my list ready if you want to know, or if you want
Okay.
me to wait.
I think we need to
Do you all want to take that up tonight?
No, we don't necessarily have to. I just thought maybe you were going to make a decision on the housing authority. That was the one that was kind of hanging out there that that I had some questions.
Is it 50 or 75,000?
They had requested 50, and I just, they do a point the
Do you
town
remember
council
what-
does appoint members to that board. but,
Well, yeah, we need to go back and look.
Okay. Yeah, but if you don't want to make a decision right now, I
I
think,
don't
I
want
think
to.
including other entities with that,
Yeah.
it could get really complicated, because once
Yeah,
again.
I understand that.
Yeah,
It-
okay.
I'm trying to help you all.
I understand. No, I think let's,
What about my idea?
I think your idea is fine. I mean, you guys can present us with your
Okay.
priority lists, and then we'll regroup as a staff and discuss with Stephanie and see if there's some of that. I do want to remind you of one thing, though, the council, that we do have in the current year's budget a contingency. And one of the things that was discussed at the finance committee, and this was going to be as opposed to maybe putting some in the budget for next year, we thought that maybe that would be the appropriate use of some contingency funds that were left over at the end of this year. Now, obviously, the situation has changed, but that's one thing to consider. To not, if we're not going to put it in next year's budget, is to consider an additional allocation of funds through your existing contingency for this fiscal year.
So we don't have any contingency right now?
No, we
Left
do in
over
this
for
year's
this
budget.
year?
Yeah.
I can't
Yes,
hear
we
you.
do in this year's budget.
So 19,
I think it's like
20?
30,000, I think.
So we still have $30,000
Yeah, I think so. We can get
left
that number
over?
for you, but I think it's around that amount, yeah.
And
That's
then
just
you're-
a suggestion, that's all.
And
But,
you're proposing 25,000 for contingency next year?
yeah,
25.
that's what we put in there, yeah.
Okay, well, let me get clear. Does the council want for each council member, are you willing to do that if it helps the budget committee, that we just simply send an email and say what each of us consider are essential items that,
That would give guidance, yeah.
would that?
Do you want to set a date, Mayor? A date for the email?
I'll ask
Yeah,
Jimmy.
the sooner we have it, the better.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, like tomorrow is fine with me. I was gonna say Wednesday, but I'd rather have it tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
okay?
It's fine.
Is it okay with you, Al?
What's that?
Mr. Mayor, I think I've already stated my preference.
Yeah, and just send them individually. Either send them to, I tell you, everybody send
Okay,
them
Al,
to
I'm
Kim.
sorry, I
Send 'em to
didn't
Kim.
get your preference other than
Well, s-
the housing authority.
That's it,
Is
yeah.
there anything?
Housing Authority and the Meals on Wheels.
Oh, Housing Authority and Meals on Wheels, okay. So he doesn't need to send his in. All right. I want to think about mine a little bit.
Yeah, I want to think about mine too.
Okay. Is there any other guidance you need, or?
I think that's it right now. That would be helpful to us if we had that, and then we can converse staff level and discuss that. I'm trying to think, just so that you know the timeline, Kim will have the draft. Now remember, the draft that's going to be in the newspaper is just what you see right here, where it says the draft summary. It's basically a duplicate of this. So if we have to make some line item changes, I'll check with Stephanie. I don't think it's going to impact this at all, as long as we're not going over that amount. Like you said, as long as the contingency comes down and we're allocating money in another department, we'd still be okay.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
just said that we're going to get this on the website. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we'll put it in the agenda packet that we upload to the website, so it'll be part of the agenda
What
packet.
about the line items, so that
You talking about this document?
any line items like that's supposed, like the budget book? Is
The
that
budget book's
public?
not done yet. These are raw numbers that
But
we
when it
have.
gets done, can it be?
Oh, yeah,
on
when the
website?
when the budget book gets finalized, we'll put it out there, absolutely, yeah. Mhm.
Mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation for just one small break.
Oh, okay. If it's with the council's consent, we'll recess for a small break.
Yes, that'd be great.
Thank you.
with the council's consent, I'd like to say one thing. I think that the Budget Committee and the staff, and especially Stephanie, have done an outstanding job under very, very difficult circumstances. And I think I can do this on behalf of the council. I think the council shares this, that you all have done a fantastic job, and we certainly do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, can I add an amen to that?
Okay, Al, amen. You in amen corner over there, aren't you?
Sure.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is under old business. No, wait a minute. Yeah, it's under old business. Matters not under the agenda. Discussion regarding property and casualty insurance renewal with Bay Corp. Mr. Moran.
Yes, this is just, we had actually considered this at the last meeting, and we decided to table it. Just wanted to get some additional information about one of their lines of coverage, and that answer has been, or that question has been answered and met to our satisfaction. So just recommending just a simple renewal of our existing policy.
Okay.
Policy.
Council, what's your pleasure? Do you want to renew the policy or not? Is there a motion to renew the policy? So motion by Mr. Webb to renew the policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Quitch. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye. Okay, matters not on the agenda. Are there any matters not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move along. Councilmember reports. Does any council member wish to make a report?
I would like to say something.
Go ahead.
I just would like to say that, due to the pandemic, my heart goes out to everybody in the world. For all who can, within consideration of what we just discussed with the budget, I'm very passionate about helping people and helping with food problems, et cetera. So I just would say that for all who can and will, to please donate to the following agencies and food banks. Maybe food banks that I'm not even going to mention here. Of course, all food banks. Meals on Wheels, Feeding Southwest Virginia, Faith in Action, and other food pantries and food banks that you can and will donate to. I hope that and pray that you will, and thank you all so much.
Okay, any other council member, thank you, Cindy. Any other council member wish to make a report? Okay, we'll move along to appointments to boards and committees. I understand that we have more than one applicant for at least one of the positions. Is there a motion that we're going to close? Do you all want to go into closed session to discuss this?
Sure. I'll make that motion. I would move that the Abingdon Town Council convene in closed session to discuss the following as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1, a personnel matter involving consideration or interviews of candidates for employment or appointment for the appointment of the Recreation Advisory Commission and/or Tourism Advisory Commission.
Motion by Mr. Webb to go into closed session. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Second by Ms. Patterson. Any discussion?
Can Al join us?
Can we?
Yeah, we're just going to stay here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Kim, call a roll, please.
Mr. Bradley.
Al? He said aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
And Mayor Craig.
Aye. Okay, council, we're in closed session. Make sure that
So I would move that the town council certify, oh, I'm sorry.
We gotta go back into open session. Is there a motion we return to open session?
Are you ready?
You good? I'd make that motion to go back into open session.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Motion by Mr. Webb, second by Ms. Quetch to go back into open session. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig?
Aye.
All right, now I would move that the town council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion.
Motion by Mr. Webb. Is there a second?
Aye.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bradley.
Y'all did.
Any discussion? Kim, do the certification.
Mr. Bradley, do you so certify?
I so certify.
Ms. Quetch?
I so certify.
Mr. Webb?
I so certify.
Ms. Patterson?
I so certify.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye.
So certify.
Okay. I believe that takes care of everything.
No.
Motions to put them on the boards.
You actually gotta do them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am worn out. I don't know about you
You're
guys.
good.
I'm not the only one making mistakes tonight.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Stephen Bednar to the Rec Advisory Commission.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Quetch, second by Mr. Webb. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr.
Oh,
Brad-
Al?
Oh. Sorry.
Al, did you want to say
Go.
something?
Go.
He's
Go
moving
ahead.
his lips, but we're not hearing anything.
We can't,
Unmute, Al. Wayne, you wanna interpret?
You're still muted, Al.
Maybe if he talks really loud, we'll be okay.
There you go.
Now, can you hear me?
Al,
yes.
do you want to say something?
No, I really didn't have anything to say.
Okay. Well, your lips were moving, Al. Do you do that all?
Well,
We're voting, Mr. Bradley, would you, your vote?
aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye.
And I would like to make a motion to appoint Bob Howard to the Rec Advisory Commission.
Motion by Mr. Webb to appoint Bob Howard to the Rec Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Quetch. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig?
Aye. Okay, now, we have an appointment to the Tourism Advisory.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to appoint a Barter Theater representative to fill the unexpired term of Dan McNeely, who is no longer available to serve, and that would be Morgan Egan.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Patterson and second by Ms. Quetch. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig?
Aye. Okay, I think we can adjourn now.
Long night, huh?
Yeah, it has been a long night.
Yeah, this is the longest one we've had in a while. Of course, it kind of culminated with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it did.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
So
you,
we are
guys.
adjourned?
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned, Al.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Al. Good to see you.
Au revoir.
Hey, I
Au
just want to let you
revoir.
guys know that IT staff's